So we're going to run through a short presentation, a sort of a primer on how GDA can work for you. And I'm extremely grateful to Anky and Gunsman and to Chef Janssen for permission to use analysis of Anky and Salinero during the Olympics as the introduction to GDA. So if you were Anky and you logged in, this was your login page. You would see an overview of the horses that GDA knows about, and with some very basic quantities like your average score, your best score, your most recent score, how long since you last did the test, and a simple little figure which shows how the scores have been going up or down in the recent past. We only show in this table what we call procedural tests, not the freestyle tests. Now if you were to jump to the tab called Evaluation, this is what you'd get. On the left you see a panel which you can use in multiple places in the product, which enables you to select which horses, what date range, which tests you're interested in. So we've selected Salinero and all tests, and now we're going to look at we can click on any of these things like trend plot, competition history, figure history, performance tables to get more details. So we go first of all to the trend overview. So here's a very simple picture which shows you how the scores have gone in the test that you've selected on the left hand side over the period that you've got there. There's actually the bottom little grayed out bar on the date on the year bar. You can drag that around and resize it so you can zoom in and look at more detail. This is probably the main place where you come to, which has the history of all of your competitions. So it's called the competition history page. You can adjust how many entries you look at on a page, for example. It's organized in terms of date, going from the most recent to the oldest. You see you've got some columns to tell you which test you're in, which level the test is, the horse, the event, the date, the score, and the rank. You also see that under the test heading there are various things. Some of them say figure scores available. That's because they're already in the GDA system, and others say upload figure scores. So if you have the figure scores, you can upload them. You can also upload competitions that GDA knows nothing at all about, and for that you can look at the video we have on uploading scores. If you click on the test, Grand Prix Freestyle 2009 for example, at London Olympics, you would see the entire test, all the riders. You'd see the scores per judge, you'd see distributions like that. But you would not be able to go in to look at any of the riders except for yourself. You could do that to follow up your own ride, or you could click on the little 82 which shows the score and go directly to the details of your own ride. Here's one more overview thing, what we call the figure histograms. Here you have histograms and little timeline charts on the right hand side, which show the notes that you received, the points that you've received over the period of time in question with this horse. So for example, you can see that you've received just over 50 times a 7, or almost 50 times an 8, and a few times a 6 under 8s. And you can see on the right hand side how the average score has progressed, that you received for this figure has progressed over a period of time. But now we're going to go and look at one particular event. We're going to go and look at the Grand Prix in London. At the top of the page you see the basic summary of what you did. You see the judges' final scores, and we pull out the technical and collective marks as well, so you can see how they have given different scores and how the judges compare with each other there. You can carry on down the page and you have your standard score sheet. This is the sort of thing that you would get probably from any digitally processed competition. Only it's not a piece of paper, it's actually of course a dynamic table. All of the columns are clickable, so that if you click on the average column you would reorder it in terms of highest to lowest, and click again it will go lowest to highest. Or if you want to look at how a particular judge scored you, highest to lowest, you just click on that column, or the running score, or the maximum differences. Here's an example where we have done exactly that. We've looked at your score sheet in a new way. We've clicked on the average score, and thus we've pulled out the best figures and the top figure here. These are the 6 figures which you received the highest scores in. Age, transitions are half past the PF, collected trot, and remarkable showing wonderful progress for Salinero even at this late age. We see his halt was one of his highest scoring figures. The closing halt has typically not been his strongest point. We've done the same thing. I clicked on average again, and now we've looked at the where the table is ordered in the terms of the lowest scoring figures, so you can concentrate on them instead. The 9 flying changes every 2 strides, extended walk, and 3 extended trots. Here's a completely different way of looking at your test. Instead of clicking on score sheet, we've clicked on timeline, and what we see here is a graph which goes from left to right the time. Your entrance and halt is at the left hand side, and the collective marks at the right hand side. The horizontal axis is drawn here at 7.334. That's the average score that you would take for each note to get 73.34%. And what we see then is that all those figures which scored above the 7.334 will show above the line. Those are the ones that pulled your score up. And all those that score below the 7.334 will go below the line, and those are the ones that pulled your score down. And just to guide the eye, we've picked out also what we saw on the previous tables: the half past left, the aids pulling the scores up the most, the extended walk, and the 9 flying changes every 2 strides pulling the scores down. We can have a quick look at this table, which is called the judges breakdown. And what we do there is look at the score given by each judge for each figure, and we represent them in this color plot. Basically, every box on there is one score from a judge in the range you see between 4 and 9, the little key on the bottom there. And what we can look there for is patterns of where the judges have been in agreement or where the judges have been in less agreement. We see, for example, that the poorly scored flying changes every 2 strides, all of the judges gave low marks for that. This was clearly a mistake in the 2 tempis seen by all the judges. The extended walk is a little bit more iffy. There were 5 judges scoring in the range of 6 and above. 1 judge at 4.5, and I think the other one was at 5. But this shows you, gives you some feel for whether or not individual judges have seen different things in your ride. Here's another way of looking. It's called comparing your ride to your competitors. When we have all of the scores for an event in the system, you can look at how your scores compared figure by figure with the ensemble of your competitors. We don't give you the option of going and comparing with individual other riders, and they of course do not have the option of comparing with your scores either. What you see here in red are your scores, and in blue are the scores given to all the other riders. Obviously there are many more scores given to the other riders in blue, so it's been scaled down so that both of them will sit on the same plot. And you see of course the changes, the 2-time changes in here, scoring considerably lower than the other riders. And you see the halt scoring higher than the other riders. Now we come to what I think is the most powerful features of global dressage analytics. It's the simulation, sort of prediction packages. So when we have enough tests, that means typically 3 or 4 tests over a period of at least a month or 2 between them, so that we can actually draw trends, we can start to analyze trends at a much more detailed level and really give you a lot more detailed feedback. We're going to discuss on the next page this figure on the left hand side, but I just want to point out the main features of it now. You see that on top there's a predicted final score, 74.7 plus or minus 3.69. You also see then that there is a bar for each figure type, not for each figure, but each type of figure that occurs in the test. The central axis of this graph is at 0.0%. What that means is that if all of your figures were on that central axis, you would get the 74.72%, and each of them would have contributed in exactly the same way. What you see then also is that the bars have different widths. The different widths are related to how much spread you have in score in that figure, how well it's mastered. And you also see them in different colors. The red ones are the figures which are getting worse over time, the green ones are getting better in time, the orange ones are staying basically the same. So as I said, we're going to look in a moment in more detail at that, but just to show you a couple of the plots that have gone into those simulations. Here, for example, are halts and changes. We see the notes over a period of time. Actually, you can click on any of the bars in that previous plot and they will pull up this picture so you can look at it. You can interact with the simulation and adjust things at a moment as well. But what you see there is, for example, that the halt improving over time with a total range of plus or minus 1 point, the changes getting slightly worse over time with a total range of plus or minus a half a point. And that's gone into the widths of the error of the bars on the previous plot. So there's the details. Now this is where you could actually come in and adjust things. Down the left hand side you see, for example, changes 6.8 plus or minus 0.38, and that little bar underneath it, you can adjust it up and down, you can change the error on it. So if you feel that our prediction is perhaps wrongly biased by a particularly poor performance at some place or particularly good performance at some place, you can adjust that and see what the effect would be on your final scores. You can do this with every figure and see how your final scores would adjust. There's a completely different way of looking at that same picture. Basically, we reorganize that same picture now in terms of we put the ones with the largest bar widths at the top and the smallest bar widths at the bottom. And we show if you wanted to increase your score by a little bit, what's the easiest way for you to do it? And we believe that the easiest way for you to improve your scores is probably to improve the figures that are already can be better, but are not always consistently good. In this case, the half-pass trot, the halt, the extended trot, with the figures which are sometimes better than they are on average, and so where there's the biggest chance that you can push the score up by 1% or so. Conversely, if we go to the other end of the chart at the reinback, it's fairly consistently performed at a particular level. Even if you do it the best reinback or the worst reinback that you could do, it only is going to change your point. You'll put your score by a small percentage. So this sort of insight gives you extra understanding of how you can tune your ride for best performance. We've almost finished. There's a table which shows that's called the figure performance, and here we've got for each horse, in this case Salinero, we've collected together on the left hand side the different paces, on the right hand side the different amplitudes. We've called lateral and amplitude, so for example pirouettes go into the lateral and shoulder ins and half passes go into the lateral. Otherwise there's the extended movements, collected medium, and the halt and piaffe pulled out as separate things. The color chart here shows you whether or not your whether the darker the green, the better the figure. So I'd like to thank Anky, Chef, and Salinero for the chance to having shown their scores as an illustration of how to use GDA. Thank you very much.